Let's talk about Charlie Kirk. So I had a really interesting conversation with one of my clients the other day, and it's something that I wanted to share because I think we could all benefit from this. Now, if you are still on the fence about how to feel about this, I think you should watch this video and hopefully this will clear up some things for you. So I asked her about it and she said that she could understand why some people were happy about this. And I said, I can't. And she was like, really? And I said, not at all. And she was like, why? And I was like, okay, let me ask you this. Do you know about the Ukrainian refugee Irina Zarutska who was on that train? And she said, yes. And I said, how does that make you feel? And she said, well, sad. And I said, why? And she said, because it came out of nowhere. She didn't deserve that. And I said, do you feel empathy for her? And she said, yeah, of course. I said, do you feel empathy for Charlie? And she said, well, not really. And I said, why? She said, because of his political views. He said some things that, I can understand can upset some people. So I said to her, do you know the political stance of that Ukrainian girl? And she said, no. And I said, so why do you feel empathy for one and not the other? And she said, oh, well, and I knew this was where I got her. And she said, oh, well, I don't know. Well, I don't know her view. I said, exactly. I said, you don't know. I said, so why can you feel empathy for one and not the other if you don't know her views? She could be far right and you would have no idea. And I said, that is why I say that this situation has got absolutely nothing to do with politics. It is literally about morality and humanity. If you cannot understand that someone being murdered in broad daylight in front of their family and thousands of people is wrong, I'm sorry to tell you, but you are a horrible person. That is literally all there is to it. And I can't believe that there are so many people that just don't understand that. Like, come on, can we not unite on this one thing at least? At the end of that conversation, she then said to me, she was like, you're right, that is true. And I said, okay, so do you feel empathy for her? She said, yes. I said, do you feel empathy for Charlie? She said, yes. And then at the end of that conversation, she said, you've changed my mind. And I said to her, no offense. I said, but sometimes in life it's easier to be a sheep than it is to go against the grain. And one thing I learned about this opinion is that it wasn't actually as unpopular as I thought it was. And yeah, this has got nothing to do with politics. So I encourage you to speak your opinion on certain things like this because it really matters. She also said to me that the reason I changed her mind is because I came at it from a non-aggressive standpoint. And I said that that's exactly how Charlie behaves in his debates. And that's why ultimately a lot of people respected him, because he gave people an opportunity to have a voice. He debated with all walks of life, all genders, colours, everything. He literally invited people with opposing views to come and debate him and start a conversation. I don't know how you can be angry at that.